Hello everyone. So thank you for coming to my first stream. We are going to play Koriko, A Magical Year, which I have been waiting for since I funded it on Kickstarter a couple months back. I can't remember exactly when I funded it, but it was described as heavily inspired by Kiki's Delivery Service, which growing up for me was the movie that I watched over and over again, no matter what kind of mood I was in. It was my first Studio Ghibli movie, and one that I still go back to whenever I'm feeling nostalgic and just need something cozy and kind of comforting to watch. So to tell a little bit more about this game, it is designed in a way that you tell the story across journal entries and letters to the mentor that you're leaving behind in your village. You're going away for a year in order to learn how to conduct your craft and serve your community without the backseat guidance from your mentor. This is really a test to see if you've learned the skills that you need to know as a witch and you feel comfortable pursuing your work in a community outside of your village. Today, we're going to go through the first volume, which is The Departure, and this is a set where we will introduce our young witch, Kestrel Larkspur, and learn a little bit more about her personality and her physical traits, and then we'll go into a little bit about the village itself. After that, we dive headfirst into the journey and then arriving in Koriko. So, let's get started. Princess Mononoke was one of my favorites, but I think I saw Kiki first when I was like 7, and so just from nostalgia, it is easily my favorite. Like every time I pick it up, I'm just like, oh, this takes me back to like making blanket forts and popcorn and just chilling in my room watching this movie. Alright, so for this, we start with Departure, like I said, which goes through the introduction, the about me, my story, farewell, take flight, journey, Koriko, and the rest and letter, which is how every volume ends. Playing this by yourself, you roll dice to pick prompts to fill out in your journal. In this case, instead of rolling just one dice for each prompt, I'm going to roll 2, and I'm going to ask chat to help me pick out which prompt we're going to answer for each of the sections in the journal. But before we get to that, we have to explain a little bit about who Kestrel Larkspur is and where she comes from. So, about me. You are a witch, a young person with burgeoning magical powers. You walk between two worlds. You're a teenager who needs to love and fight and cry and shout, but as part of the next generation of witches, you also need to carry the burden of an ancient dying tradition on your shoulders. First, we're going to start with the bio. And in this game, they have a little bit of a section that you can fill in, which I really love. I loved these like Mad Lib games when I was younger, so this kind of takes me back to that. So to start, let's begin our entry for my story with our bio. I've already typoed. Wonderful. Let's try this again. My name is Kestrel Larkspur. I'm a 16-year-old witch in training. And when you first see me, you'll probably notice my look, and look. And we're going to go through these in just a minute, but I want to type this up first so that we can go back to it. I wear style and carry with me pretty much everywhere. You'll probably also notice my familiar name. They're the blank that never leaves my side. Our bond is so strong that we can even talk to each other. though you probably won't understand us. Most folks from my village would say I think. The people close to me make it clear that I should always be. As for me, I think I'm, and I'd really like to be more. So now that we have this blurb written, we're gonna go over the options, and I'm gonna ask you guys to help me pick this out as well. Let's go to the next page. We've already picked out the name for Kestrel Larkspur, but in this case we get to pick her look. We have 3 different selections to make out of the look category, and these can be anything. These are just some examples, so if you have any ideas that are not in this list, feel free to shout them out. For the list we have piercing stare, careworn eyes, restless gaze, Coke bottle glasses, easy smile, a toothy grin, chewed lip, fuzzy beard, a shaved head, messy hair, silver streak, neat braids, facial tattoos, acne scars, meticulous makeup, prominent birthmark, calloused hands, and perfect nails or stained fingers. So I immediately gravitate towards messier looks personally. I really like the idea of a character having sort of stained fingers and messy hair and being a character that has been lived in and not someone who is meticulously put together. So, what do you think? Out of our options, is there any that stick out to you? Restless gaze. All right, cool. So we'll add restless gaze. And I think we're going to also add in stained fingers. And we have one more option to pick. What do we want to pick for our last option? I think in this case we're gonna go with messy hair. Just make this a restless, messy kind of kid who can't keep her fingers clean. She's constantly digging in dirts or potions or something like that. Now, in terms of style, we get to pick what presentation Kestrel has to the rest of the world. And so we have a pretty big list here. There are heavy black robes, which feel very traditional and wizarding world. A bright yellow dress, which makes me think more of the Studio Ghibli movies in that sense. Hand-me-down shirt, a denim vest, moss-covered knitwear, a herringbone coat, a polyester jacket, bootcut jeans, baggy shorts, an embroidered skirt, garish dungarees, a shoestring belt, spotless gloves, very pointy shoes, fraying sandals, a pointed hat, flight goggles, a bright red bow, wildflower braids, a crown of briars, and bone charms. So I think one of the ones that I'm going to pick is going to be bone charms because I am personally somebody who absolutely will wear little bone charms and necklaces just in the course of my day-to-day, and so I like that kind of personal connection to Kestrel that way. So we get to pick one more style option, and that can be anything, not just on this list. So it could be a pair of specific glasses, or it could be maybe she has piercings and she's known for those. What do you think? What should we do for our last style? Yeah, right? Me too. I like the idea that she just kind of pilfers her charms and her clothes from people that she cares about. So the hand-me-down shirt, I think, works really well. And now we get to pick something that is a token for Kestrel, something that she cares enough about that she carries it with her everywhere. And this could be something from a family member who is around or not. I kind of have an idea of Kestrel's backstory that I want to explore as we go through this story, but we'll see with the prompts if that sort of thing comes up or not. In this case, I'm actually going to pick this one because it ties into the background that I have in mind for Kestrel. And so Kestrel always carries a journal of her mother's final research notes with her pretty much everywhere she goes. Exactly. She just grabs what she needs for the day and runs out the door. I get the vibe from Kestrel that she will sleep in until the absolute last minute and then wake up and just be on the go from the moment she wakes up until the moment she crashes. So that fits very nicely with what I have in mind for Kestrel. So now we move on to talking about our familiar. It's very exciting. So we get to name our familiar here. And so I think before we name the familiar, we need to know what kind of familiar it is, because that's going to influence what name we pick for our critter. So the adjectives that we can pick, and this is just, again, a quick list. There is friendly, bright-eyed, fearless, skittish, dozy, wary, sassy, aloof, smelly, cute, tiny, giant, multicolored, creepy, two-headed, three-eyed, or spectral. There are a lot of really cool options for what kind of adjective we get to describe our familiar with. I don't think I want to do two-headed because that just seems a little out there. I kind of think I want to go with a three-eyed mink in this case. Something soft and kind of sneaky that can dip and weave around where she needs them to go. And there's just something really cool about a creature having more than one eye, I think. Like more than two eyes. I've always been drawn to weird critters like that. So we have a... Oh, Sleepy! Yes! Sleepy, three-eyed mink. This lazy little creature. Oh, yes. Kestrel has to cajole this little critter into doing what she needs. I like to imagine that anytime Kestrel has a hood or something or a bag, the mink is sleeping inside of it, like getting their nap in before Kestrel wakes them up to do something. But now we have to name it. I like the idea of sticking to natural names. So something like, kind of like Kestrel, but maybe flower or tree based versus animal based. So we could do birch or hazel, rose, wildflower. Let's see. I think I like the name Hazel for our little familiar. I think, yeah, we're gonna go with Hazel, the sleepy, three-eyed mink. Now we get to describe Kestrel herself a little bit, which we've kind of started to do. So I might not use the list of traits we have unless there's any that stick out to you. So the traits we have to describe Kestrel in this suggestion list are friendly, helpful, charming, vital, lazy, lucky, ungrateful, spoiled, strange, hot-headed. Oh, a flower that helps you sleep. Oh, I'm gonna have to look that up. Cat, you're a genius. Let's see. Snake plants help you sleep? I didn't know that as a person. So okay, we have options. There is Hazel, which is the one that we have, and it's kind of a sweet name, I like it. But there's also Lavender or Ivy. Apparently English Ivy helps you sleep, which is another one that I didn't realize. But I guess it makes sense as a plant that people like have in their bedrooms and such. Lavender? Yeah, that was the one that I immediately was like, I think lavender. Alright, cool. So back to the trait list. We have... No, by all means, my thought was, yes, let's do something flower related, but then I realized I don't know any flowers. I know roses because I keep like mini rose bushes in my room, but that's about all I know. I was like, oh no, I have to do homework. So for traits, we have strange, hot-headed, easygoing, tenacious, pragmatic, composed, shy, modest, curious, tender, creative, cute. Oh my god, yes. Entertaining, admired, and boring. Lavender absolutely is like this like mostly white, but there is a purple sheen to the fur of this sweet little mink. Just enough to make it like obvious that this is not just a normal creature. This is a familiar. It has been marked by the magic of Kestrel. I love it. I love it. Traits. Listen, this is how this is gonna go. I'm gonna get distracted by thinking about more details for this because as somebody who likes character building, I'm like, I need a 5-page document on a background and all of these traits and all of these things that are important. And that's not what this game asks you to build for the first time you're playing. So I'm very easily distracted by like background building. So, like I said, as we're talking about Kestrel, I think we've kind of come up with the traits. She could be a little hot-headed. I think she's very, what's the word for, openly emotional? Like, she doesn't hide her emotions on her sleeve. What is a term for that? An open book, maybe? What is the word for that? I'm looking at synonyms for emotions. I don't think any of those fit, really. I think we're gonna go with hot-headed for this, just for the sake of simplicity. So I think most folks in the village would say that she can be a little hot-headed. Yeah. See, I like those descriptions. I think I like for who people close to her see and how she maybe sees herself and wants to see herself. So I think for the people close to me, make it clear that I should always be an open book, I think. Encouraging her to not just show her emotion when she's upset, but also to present when she is confident and when she is caring, just keeping those emotions on her face and not closing herself off to the outside world. especially in the face of a world that is changing. And as we will come to learn, this world sees witchcraft as something that is a dying tradition, not something that is openly relied upon. And so I think it would be easy to kind of close yourself off to a world that is not necessarily open to you and your practices. And so by reminding her to remain open and keep her heart open, I think that's something that is really good for people that are close to her to encourage her. I absolutely think that Kestrel thinks she's passionate. Like, I think she knows that she is passionate. So I'm going to put that here. But what would she like to be more of? That's the question. My first thought is steady, maybe? Someone who is a little less governed by their first impulse reaction and their emotional reaction to how things appear to be to her. Steady, composed maybe, but I feel like that doesn't quite fit with her personality to be composed. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking more of. It's less shame about her emotions and more just being prepared and being seen as somebody who can be relied upon. Reliable, maybe, might be a good description here, more than steady or something like that. I think maybe reliable is probably the best way to describe that. So let's go with reliable. So, to start entry 1 with my story, let's go over this again. My name is Kestrel Larkspur. I'm a 16-year-old witch in training, and when you first see me, you'll probably notice my restless gaze, stained fingers, and messy hair. I wear bone charms and hand-me-down shirts, and I carry a journal of my mother's final notes with me pretty much everywhere. You'll probably also notice my familiar, Lavender. They're a sleepy, three-eyed monk that never leaves my side, with a lavender sheen to their light-colored coat. Our bond is so strong that we can even talk to each other, though you probably won't understand us. Most folks from my village would say I'm hot-headed, I think, but the people close to me make it clear that I should always be an open book. As for me, I think I'm passionate, and I'd really like to be more reliable. I'm just adding in a little bit about just fixing the little details that I messed up and adding a detail about the coat for Lavender so that we don't forget that in the future. Let's see. And now we get to move on to our biography, which talks more about the village itself that we're from. So this is our story. We are going to write a couple paragraphs about where we're from and our relations in the village, especially the relationship we have to our mentor. So, we're writing this from our home, the quiet village I've lived in all of my life. let's see. Names for the village are something that I didn't think about a lot. So we have a couple of options here in our little trait list. I think the one that sticks out to me, I like it a lot, is Gristhorpe. And so I think we're going to say that we're from the village of Gristhorpe. I'm writing this from Gristhorpe. Quiet little village I've lived in all my life. I live here with, and we get to name our mentor. This is another one where they encourage you to use names that are unusual or more nature-oriented. And so in this case, I'm going to name our mentor Jackdaw, because I like the idea of them being related by name as birds of prey. So we have Kestrel, we have Jackdaw. I think if it comes up and we get to name more family members, they might also be in the family of prey-driven birds. So I live here with Jackdaw, the village witch. They're my baba. People in the village say they're trait, but they can actually be when it's just us. And we get to pick some traits after this. Since I decided to become a witch, they've acted as my mentor, teaching me the basics of the old ways. We've learned a lot together, but now it's time for me to put it into practice on my own, far from their guiding hand. Me and my familiar will be leaving on the next full moon, just 2 days from now, to spend a year away. I hope to, but also want to. When I dream about my new home, I wake up with lingering memories of and blank. So in these paragraphs, we get to pick a couple of traits for Jackdaw, the mentor, as well as set intentions for what our young witch wants to do in Koriko when she gets there. Like, what are the things that she dreams of accomplishing? What drives her in her travel to Koriko from Gristhorpe? Yes, Gristhorpe? I'm gonna go with Gristhorpe. Hi, Nat! Thank you for coming. We won't tell that you're watching stream while you're working. And we also get to pick 2 aspects of the village of Koriko, which is going to pull into, when we get there, how the city appears to us, whether or not we've dreamed of something that is true to the village in a sort of premonition fashion, or if we have elevated Koriko in our heads to a fantasy and the city maybe doesn't quite live up to that. So, let's go over our traits for Jackdaw. One thing that I think is interesting here, and I'm kind of pulling from a little bit Grandma Wren from the children's adventure of Worlds Beyond Numbers first campaign, which I highly recommend if you haven't checked it out. It's a podcast with Brennan Lee Mulligan, Abria Iyengar, Erica Ishii, and Lou Wilson. It's so good. I've been listening to it while I'm working. It's such a fun ride. It's a completely homebrew world. It's Brennan is the DM in this one, and they have a Patreon with a couple of backstories behind it. Children's Adventure is one of them. It's very cute and very much like, the feel is very My Neighbor Totoro. Like, you're away for a summer in a little cabin, and it's great. I could go on and on about it personally. Anyway, so for traits with Jackdaw, I was thinking she is an older woman who maybe is seen in the village as somebody who is reliable and someone to go to when you have problems, because she has been there for so long, and she has been this sort of community staple. And so Gristhorpe doesn't necessarily shy away from magic, because they've had Jackdaw in this village to encourage them to come to her with problems. So when it comes to traits to describe her, I think... Honestly, I think old-fashioned might be one of the better traits to describe Jackdaw, is how the village sees her, because she does rely so heavily on the old ways of their tradition and keeping those traditions alive in terms of her witchcraft. So we're gonna go with old-fashioned here. But when it's just Jackdaw and Kestrel, I think she's softer, and she is more gentle with Kestrel and more loving than she might necessarily be to strangers or to people she knows in the village. Let's see. So one of the options, we have a couple options here. We could do kind, inspirational, sensitive, generous, peaceful, cheerful. I think of all the options, the one that kind of resonates with me most when thinking about Jackdaw is kind. She has been kind to Kestrel since taking her under her wing, and she is, even in the lessons that Kestrel has to learn the hard way, she is still patient and, ooh, thoughtful? Maybe. Yeah. Because I think she is very intentional with the way that she teaches Kestrel and gives Kestrel room to grow for herself. Let's do thoughtful. I like thoughtful. So. I think so, yeah. I think she's very encouraging of Kestrel trying new things and learning new techniques. So as much as she endeavors to teach her the traditional ways, it's more so that she can keep these traditions alive, but not so she can't change them. Like, kind of, you need to know the basics before you can start improvising, sort of a vibe. Now, we get to go into drives. And like I said, this kind of sets the intention of why Kestrel's leaving and what she plans on accomplishing. So the drives we have listed are: prove my mentor made the right choice, hone my magic into something truly special, show the world that witchcraft isn't dead yet, stay true to my village traditions, find out what a new culture can teach me, pursue my non-witchy interests, and chill out and enjoy being a teenager. And we get to pick two of these. So first, I think, is the drive that she is leaving the village to prove herself to Baba Jackdaw and to the village. And so I'm stuck between prove my mentor made the right choice or hone my magic into something truly special. Those are the two that I kind of go between when I think of the reason that Kestrel is leaving home and what she is looking forward to when she goes to Koriko. And I think the second drive should be less related to her magic and more related to her experiences, her first time outside of the village. I like the idea of her wanting to prove Jackdaw made the right choice in picking her as her apprentice. I think maybe we'll go with that one as her primary drive to leave to the village, to leave the village of Gristhorpe and venture out to Koriko to prove herself. So we'll go with that, I think. So I hope to prove that my mentor made the right choice. But I also want to, and this is one that I want to be a more youthful drive, if that makes sense. Because we are talking about, a 16-year-old witch, and so I think it's important to her to also still live and to get to experience new things. And so I think either her second drive is going to be find out what a new culture can teach me, or chill out and enjoy being a teenager. And so I'm kind of leaning towards a new culture, yeah, because she could chill out and enjoy being a teenager without having to leave the village. And this is more in line with why she's leaving in the first place. So I think I like that one. So, find out what a new culture can teach me. Now this is one that I really like. It's very cool to me. Kestrel has been dreaming about leaving for Koriko, and there are memories that cling to her in the early morning when she wakes up as the last tendrils of consciousness and unconsciousness kind of snap away from each other. And so there are two aspects that she tends to see repeating in her dreams about Koriko. And we have a whole list here of cool aspects, but if there are any that you can think of things about a city that might linger when you dream about it, that's also something that we can talk about too. So, the list for aspects of the city are bright banners against crumbling walls, gnarled olive trees wound with gold thread, dusty libraries holding rare titles, a great lake dotted with floating palaces, a jumble of stalls spanning a creaking bridge, rival department stores with elaborate displays, the restorative tang of freshly brewed tea, the syrupy waft of warm treacle tarts, charming pickpockets with cheeky smiles, costume musicians on every corner, the sound of an orchestra tuning up, droning voices chanting scripture, a sacred and terrible machine, or a spire of silver and glass piercing the sky. I'm not gonna lie, all of these sound really, really cool, and so I've had a hard time narrowing down which ones I like. I really like the idea of one of the aspects being a great lake dotted with floating palaces, just this city built on a lake, and so almost like Venetian in style, where to get around there are very few vehicles and there are bridges and boats, and that is a principal way of traversing this city. And I also like the idea of describing something like the tang of freshly brewed tea or the syrupy waft of warm treacle tarts, something that isn't visual but is more sensory. So that's where I'm at with my options. I think the Great Lake is a really cool one, really charming, and kind of sets the tone for what Kestrel is expecting from the city of Koriko, having never been there. And then the sense that she kind of expects to experience in a new city. The stalls on the bridge, yeah, exactly. See, we could work in these markets that are just open and on the walkways of the bridges throughout the city, like in the marketplace, but also maybe stalls that just happen to set up on the edge of bridges because they know people are going to be walking by. I think I want to use both of these. Maybe instead of a scent one, we have the jumble of stalls in the Great Lake. Or we combine them together. Let's see. I think combining them might work best, because if I have this vision in my head of these stone bridges and pavement walkways being built, or wooden stone bridges being built to last. Let's see. Let's write something. I wake up with the lingering memories of a great lake, dotted with floating palaces, and jumbles of stalls spanning the walkways and bridges. And I do like the non-visual as well. We could do the orchestra. Either costume musicians on every corner or the sound of an orchestra tuning up. I think, yeah, let's go with orchestra. Can you imagine this like open city with just music floating down from wherever it happens to source from? Like almost like a orchestra playing and it's pumped throughout the city, so you hear it no matter where you are. Yeah! And the sound of an orchestra tuning up. So, this is the end of our first entry. We have described ourselves and we have described our home and our family. And now we get to spend 2 days before we leave reacting to reflections and encounters. So we get to do a new entry for each of these, for each day. So first, let's set up our new entry. Entry 2. And I'll title this after we know what the prompt is so that it's a little more fitting. But this is the point where we get to roll some dice. So, first we're going to roll for an encounter because I think the encounter is going to inform the reflection. So I'm going to roll 2 dice and we will pick one of those 2 options for our first encounter in this village of Gristhorpe. Roll my pretty dice. Okay, so I rolled a 3 and a 4. So we get to pick either 3, one of your family members, not magical at all, asks for your help with their work. Do they labor with their hands or do something more academic? And as you work, what advice do they share? Or our second option is you pay a visit to your oldest and best friend for the last time in a long time. What mischief or comfort do you indulge in together? What hopes do they share for your future? And I think the way that I'm going to take these is have you guys help me with the prompt and then just kind of improvise how I imagine this scenario going. So less asking questions about it and more just unveiling the story for you guys as we go through these encounters and reflections. So, first choice, do we go with prompt 3 or prompt 4? Best friend. Alright, cool. So we go with prompt number 4. Alright. So we pay... I'm gonna write this in so I don't forget. I don't really have to write it because it's right next to me, so okay. So this will be written from first person because it is Kestrel's perspective on this interaction. So... there are 2 days before my flight to Koriko on the full moon. Before leaving, I had to make my rounds to pay visits to the friends and family that I won't see for a year, if not longer. I don't want to do I wouldn't. First, No, I don't think it would be first. I think this would be one of the last visits she does. I've put off this visit as long as I could, knowing that this was going to be one of the harder ones. Growing up in Gristhorpe, the village itself is small. Families and children grow up together. Our school had a combined class. And in this class, I met my very best friend. What do we want to name this friend? I met my very best friend Joanna. Joanna and I spent countless summers and weekends running through fields and forests, diving into lakes, searching for unknown treasures. I'm going to miss her. Most, I think, when I leave this place. Even though I can always come back, there is something different about the weight of this goodbye. Knowing that we won't just be a few houses away, or even a few miles, but much farther than we've ever been apart before. I find Joanna. Do I want to do this in present tense, or do I want to do this in past tense? I'll fix the tenses, I think, because this is a little bit of stream of consciousness writing, so I'll fix the tenses when I put it into the actual journal for a review. So, I find Joanna at the edge of the lake, where she often goes to think, or skip rocks, or try to push people in. It's not a great pastime, and we've been admonished more than once for using magic and trickery to get people to take an unintended dip in the lake. Those are some of my fondest memories. She's mad at me, I think, when we first meet up together. I've spent the last couple weeks making my goodbyes to family and friends, but not to her. I don't think she knows how difficult this is for me. But we have one last day together before I have to prepare to leave, and I want it to be the best. Come swim with me? I ask. So we swim. But we don't swim in this lake, the one that sits on the sleepy eastern edge of our village. There's a lake deeper into the forest, one that I've only gone to with Jackdaw. It's not particularly magical in any literal sense, but because it's a place I've only shared with Jackdaw, it feels important. Joanna goes to the lake for peace. If I can't be here to give that to her personally, then maybe this place will be a new source for her. Until I come home. We spend the day swimming, and I take great pride in my ability to help us breathe underwater so I can show her the hidden nooks and crannies, the little caves, the airways that are built beneath this hidden lake, feeding into an old ruined temple. Inside the temple, we sit for hours and just talk about nothing. Neither of us want to say what's coming out loud. It won't stop it from happening, but I think for us to say it is to make it real, and I don't want it to be real today. It's several hours before we return to the village, and as we walk back through the trails of the forest, Joanna finally speaks in a tone that I've been dreading. I hope you don't. She trails off. I nudge her a little to continue. Don't find a new best friend. Okay? You're only leaving for a year, and maybe I'll come to Koriko with you. Not now, but maybe later. So don't find a new best friend. Okay? I smile and nod. I can't imagine finding a friend who could be as dear to me as Joanna. I won't. You're always going to be my best friend. This year will fly by. You'll see. I try to comfort her with these words. I don't think they're true. I think this year will be long, and I will have a lot to learn. But maybe if I can leave her with a small comfort, it won't hurt so bad to fly away on the moon. Together, we return to the village, and I return to Baba Jackdaw's hut. It's been a good day, and I hope it's one we both remember fondly for the next month, for the next year. I think that's where we're going to end this entry for the encounter. And now we get to pick our reflection. Let's see. So the way it's set up is that these are each going to be their own entries, which I kind of like because I want to end where we've ended for this prompt. So for entry 3, we get to pick a reflection. And so, let's see here, let's see. So I'm gonna roll 2 dice again, and we're gonna see which reflection we want to work with. Roll the dice. Ah! I got double ones on that one. I feel like that's a sign. So prompt number 1 is, what will you miss most about home, and what are you glad to leave behind? And it also has these helpful little tidbits like my kin, my buddies, the smell, my studies, to guide your writing as you need it, in case you're having a hard time figuring out what you want to write for these reflections. But I think I have a good grasp on Kestrel, so I think we're going to be okay. What will I miss most about home? Everything. I know that's dramatic, but it's true. My whole life has been built in Gristhorpe. My friends and family are here. Baba Jackdaw is here. Not just my Baba, but my mentor, my safety net. I've spent so long learning under her that to leave feels kind of like falling on my own. I'll miss our festivals. Gristhorpe celebrates with the harvest, and blueberry season is its own special time of the year. I'll miss the fresh strawberries from Baba Jackdaw's garden, and stealing cream pies from the bakery while Joanna sets aside the coins to pay for our pilfered goods. I'll miss Mom. I always miss Mom. But when I'm home, I can go to her gravestone. I can sit and I can read the words she wrote in her notes, and I can feel her there, her presence. I won't have that in Koriko. I'm sure they'll have places to honor your ancestors, to visit with the deceased. But my mom won't be there. She'll be here in Gristhorpe, watching over Baba Jackdaw and Dad and Joanna. I'm going to miss seeing everything happening in the village, the little ways it modernizes itself. It feels like years before we had a proper road built in that leads to the next city. Trade has changed the shops in our town, welcoming new families and new opportunities. How much will it change in the year I'm gone? Will I recognize the old stones of Gristhorpe beneath whatever new facade awaits me then? There are things that I'll be glad to leave behind, but they are very few. I'll be glad to leave behind. I need a name. I'll be glad to leave behind Malcolm and Thomas and their games, which always put me and Joanna at the butt of the joke. I'll be glad to leave Dad's study behind, dusty and covered in a mix of his current projects and the old toys Mom would tinker with before she passed. I'll certainly be glad to be rid of school. The cramped space in that one-room building where we all stuck together and begrudgingly worked through our mathematics and histories. I'm going to miss them. but I think I'll be glad to leave my family behind for the year. It's only a year. I can always come home. And I think this year away will be good for all of us. To grow apart and then grow together again. I think I'm gonna end this entry there. And now we get to do the whole thing over again. So we get to roll 2 encounters because this will be the day before we leave. So we have just gone through the first of 2 days before we fly away from the village of Gristhorpe. And now we are getting to the point where the day of our flight is upon us. So, let's roll for our encounters, see what we're doing today. I rolled a 2 and a 4, and we've already done 4, so we'll go with 2. Which I think is nice for the final day before flying out. This prompt is, your mentor, Baba Jackdaw, has prepared one final trial for you. What magic task do they set for you? How do you fail to meet it? You can see they're disappointed, but how do they try to reassure you anyway? This one I think I'm going to have to think about. What kind of trial do we want to have for our young witch? I think we're going to go back to the lake for this trial. Yeah, let's start there. The morning of my evening flight, I had hoped to sleep in. Baba Jackdaw had other plans. The sun is barely up when I'm roused from my sleep by the ever so helpful Lavender, who for once is awake before I am. Now, Lavender will sleep practically anywhere, even when I need her. But this morning she's awake and she seems agitated. When I go downstairs, fixing my hand-me-down shirts and rubbing the stained charcoal from my fingers, I see why. Baba Jackdaw is here, sipping tea with Dad. But she's dressed in what I call her doing magic stuff garb. Looking at Baba Jackdaw this way, it's no surprise she's a witch. She wears a flowing dress of many colors, hues of purple and blues and pinks, all swirling together like a vivid night sky. She has gloves on, which makes me think we're probably going to be working in the garden. And her golden spectacles sit on her nose. Ah, she says. There you are. Well, hurry up then. We've work to do. Can I have breakfast first? I grab quickly for a piece of toast sitting on a plate, knowing full well that we will not have time. breakfast. If Grandma Baba Wren Jackdaw is already here, it means we're late. No time for that, she insists. And I feel the familiar jab of her wooden walking stick into my hip. No time for that. Come along now. We've got quite a walk with us, ahead of us. Go on, put on your shoes. Groaning, I do as I'm told, and we're soon off into the forest. Not the garden, like I thought. Strange, but not necessarily unusual. Baba Jackdaw leads me to the secret lake again. This lake, you see, feeds into an old ruined temple that sits overgrown with ivy and leaves. If you didn't know the temple was here, it'd be easy to overlook it in the overgrowth. The only way inside is to go beneath the lake and up into the temple. This, Baba Jackdaw explains to me again, as if I haven't done it half a dozen times. Now, listen. This is important, she says. As if anything Baba Jackdaw has taught me has ever not been important. You're going to venture inside to the furthest room at the back of the temple. There, you'll find a glyph. Break the seal and return to me with the contents of the glyph. You'll need this. She hands me an empty vial. Glass and round and heavy. Be sure you don't let it get away. It could be quite dangerous in the wrong hands. All right. I nod confidently and dive into the lake. Glyphs, see, are spells woven to hold creatures in place. No, that doesn't make sense with what I've just written. Seals are used to keep glyphs in place. Glyphs are kind of like magical creatures, but they're not usually corporeal. They can wind and weave through the wind and water. They can squeeze into any nook and cranny. To have a glyph is usually good luck, depending on the color. Some glyphs, like red and bronze ones, tend to be dangerous. Those glyphs are usually kept locked up in libraries and witches' armories, just in case. But blue glyphs? Pink ones? They're practically fairy lights. Decoration and little pots of good luck. I didn't know a glyph was housed here in the temple. Baba Wren Jackdaw has never let me go this far into the temple without her. This is a test. Swimming to the back room of the temple takes time. It's a series of climbing up into the temple, stalking across what platforms still exist, and diving back into the water. Breathing underwater is something I've picked up like a fish, given how frequently I like to swim. That part's no trouble at all, really. It's the glyph that's the problem. When I arrive to the back of the temple, to this hidden room, the door is cracked. I peek inside and see that the glyph is not found. Bouncing around the room, hiding in corners, there is a black inkiness that lurks here that is not shadow. It moves like liquid, slick and quiet as it darts from one corner to another, as if to hide in the shadows, even though it is darker and more solid and certainly does not blend in. Someone has broken the seal on this glyph, and capturing it is going to be much harder. But I have to try. Entering the room, I unseal the vial. Part of me hopes that it will just dash into it, like a new home. Of course, that's not what happens. I carefully step towards the cliff, but as I do, it darts away, around and behind me, never leaving the room, curiously, but avoiding my gaze, avoiding my touch. I try this again and again, chasing the glyph around the room with slow and steady steps, to no avail. I really don't want to use magic if I can help it, I try to say to the glyph. Whether they're intelligent enough to understand human speech is up for debate, but this one doesn't respond. Well, I've tried every other way. I set the vial on the ground, standing over it with my feet apart, hands spread, and I cast my spell. Casting a spell feels warm. It's like pulling tendrils of something freshly woven, like fresh spun wool, and binding it together in a pattern that produces a result. Baba Jackdaw has explained it to me countless times, but the only way I can explain it is that to cast a spell is to weave a thought into reality and to push it into being. My thought: to trap this glyph in the vial. My weaving: is of purple and violet and lavender hues, the color of my magic. Energy swirls in the room, and the glyph seems to react to this more than anything else I've tried. It shudders and pulls back. It recoils from the warmth of my magic. But I have already woven my spell, and now it is time to push it into being. The room flares with the violet hues of my spell, and there is a sudden sensation of suction, of force being pulled into the vial from this room. I stand my ground, keeping my stance heavy in my feet to avoid being pulled with the force of the spell. The glyph, too, struggles against the pull of the current of air. As it struggles, it begins to slip from the corner of the wall to the cracked door. No, no, no! I can't let go of the spell before it's done. Doing that is catastrophic. But I can't let this glyph out of the room either. With no other option, I throw my hands. The current of air that is sucking into the vial suddenly blows outward with the force of a hurricane. The room around me shifts and groans at the force of impact on its walls. The door beyond the room is shattered. Only a pile of rubble remains. The glyph is gone. I failed. The vial is shattered. There is nothing to bring back to Baba Jackdaw. I return through the pattern of dives and climbs until I'm out of the temple, almost in a daze. Above me, the sky is dark, as if a storm is brewing. Baba Jackdaw knows I failed before I've reached the shore. I'm sorry, I say softly. It was a black glyph. I've never seen one before. I tried to pull it into the vial, but it was... Baba Jackdaw seems worried. And disappointed. I don't blame her. I've never captured a glyph before on my own. It's hard work, but it's one of the more common and dangerous tasks given to a young witch. Catching glyphs and returning them to armories and libraries is important. An unchecked glyph can manifest in so many dangerous ways, and people without magic aren't always able to defend themselves. And I failed to capture this one. Well, Baba Jackdaw says, it's unfortunate, but there's hardly any need to go crying over spilt milk. But I try to interject. I deserve her disappointment. I should have been able to do this. No buts, Baba Jackdaw tuts. There's a storm coming. We might as well return to town. No need to get even more wet out here than you already are. She drapes a shawl over my shoulders like a towel, and I burrow into it. It's warm and soft and comforting. I can't help but feel like I don't deserve it. Baba Jackdaw leads me home, not to her hut, but to my home. She deposits me there, and without a word, she returns to her home. I'm left alone in my house, with a shawl draped around my shoulders, and a sense that whatever that cliff was, Baba Jackdaw will now have to go after it alone. This is not how I wanted to leave Gristhorpe. That prompt got a little more real than I expected it to, considering I was just stream of consciousness writing. Let's do our final reflection before we take flight. Is this entry 5? This is entry 5. Alright, let's roll for our reflection. So we go back up here. Don't roll double ones this time, please. Okay, I rolled a 3 and a 4. So, who in the village has always believed in your potential, and whose reservations will you be glad to escape? Or, a year from now, what kind of homecoming do you anticipate? How do you think the village will be changed without you? Kestrel's kind of talked about 4 a little bit in terms of what she expects the village to change without her in her last reflection, so I think we'll go with number 3. Who in the village has always believed in your potential, and whose reservations will you be glad to escape? If Baba Jackdaw didn't believe in me, she'd never have agreed to take me under her wing. She's not the only one who saw my potential with magic, though. Mom always said I'd be something special when I grew up. She wanted to see it herself, but anyway, my family believes in me. They've always felt like I could do this. Magic was something that came naturally to me. Honestly, I don't think Baba Jackdaw could avoid me being her apprentice. By the time I was 10, I was bewitching my toys and chasing fairy lights that no one could see. It was apprentice. It was become an apprentice or risk losing that connection to the magical world around us. How could I ever give that up? But it hasn't all been positive. Not everyone believes witches are necessary, or that glyphs are as dangerous as we know they are. Some people, like Malcolm and his father, think that witches are just glorified storytellers, that we weave stories instead of spells, and we take money from hard-earned people, take hard-earned money from people who can't be parted from it. Maybe he's right. Maybe we shouldn't do this for money. But even we have to survive, to buy food and bread and clothes, and to have a home over our heads. We live in a world where magic is increasingly difficult for the mundane to see. Particularly powerful glyphs and particularly powerful witches can change that. This can change that. They can cast spells and weave enchantments so strong that the very air around them is electrified by it. In their presence, how can anyone question the reality of magic and witchcraft? I'm no great witch, but Baba Jackdaw is. One day, I hope to be as strong as her. I hope to show the world that magic is not retreating, but only hidden, and that if one were to look, they would find it. Maybe one day, I'll show people, like Malcolm and his father, that we truly mean well, and we only want what's best for the world. It all starts in Koriko. It all starts in Koriko. That is our final reflection for the 2 days before our flight. Now, we get to take flight before our journey. In this case, we don't roll a dice to pick a prompt. We actually pick one that we think is fitting from this list. And so the options we have are goodbyes with a crowd, with a feast, with a pair, or alone. I think what fits most with Jackdaw and Kestrel, especially following the failure of Kestrel to capture the black glyph of the ruined temple, is to take off alone. And so that is the prompt that we will go with today. We are setting up kind of a sad story for Kestrel, and I hope it gets better. This will be the last entry that we write today, and then next week we will start our journey to Koriko and finish up the volume. So, take flight. Entry 6. With the full moon at its zenith, you gather your belongings in silence. Rain beats down outside and the streets are deserted. You open the door carefully, guiding the latch to keep it quiet, and then you step outside. Why did you choose to lead this way? As you fly away, do you look back? Let's begin. The full moon lights up the streets of Gristhorpe in a way that is comforting and lonely. The pitter-patter of rain only serves to highlight how empty the streets are. I've always envisioned how I would leave Gristhorpe for my year away, with a big feast, with a crowd of people excited to see me off. But that is not the departure I have planned. In the quiet of night, I leave my home. There is a letter on the door. On the inside of the door, taped in place for Dad. I've already said my goodbyes to Dad, but I know he'd have wanted to see me on my flight. This is easier. He needs his rest. And it's the middle of the night. With my bag packed and lavender tucked into the pocket of my old worn hoodie, I make my way to Baba Jackdaw's. The lights are out in her hut. Beneath the moon, she sleeps. The full moon hasn't fully risen. I'm not meant to leave until it does. But like I said, this is easier. Hopping the fence into her back garden is child's play. I've done it every year since I was tall enough to make the jump without breaking my nose. I jump the fence and make my way back to the shed where our brooms sit. Opening the shed, the moonlight illuminates the contents of Baba Jackdaw's workshop. There are vials and tubes of flowers and vines, rocks and liquids, all part and parcel to her workings and her charms. Sitting in the corner is an old broom, woven with wild ivy and sprigs of lavender. A newer one, freshly bound, sits beside it. There's a basket there, and a note. I pick up the basket and the note first, frowning. Has my plan gone awry? Inside, the note is short, and I should have expected it. For your journey, love, your jackdaw. Of Baba Jackdaw. The basket, upon inspection, is filled with food and rations for the road. A warm blanket shawl, like the one I have at home. A fresh hoodie, in case of cold flights. And a journal, a new book, to begin my observations and explorations of the city of Koriko. Of course she knew I'd leave alone. I pluck up my broom, tuck and attach the basket to the hook at the end, tying it securely so I don't lose my lunch in the takeoff flight. Outside in Baba Jackdaw's garden, I stop and just breathe. The air of the garden is heavy with the smell of herbs and flowers, sweetness of honey from her bees, the gentle trickle of her garden fountain. These sounds are sounds I will not hear for a year. These scents are ones that I might find in Koriko, but they will never hold the depth of feeling that I have right here in this garden. It's only a year. I steady myself, right myself on my broom and kick off. It's good that it's raining. With my hood up, and lavender tucked into my pocket, it's hard to tell if I'm crying or if it's only the rain. It's only a year. Okay. That is going to be where we end things today. So it's been about an hour and a half. I imagine it'll take the same amount of time for the stream next week to finish this volume. If you guys want me to do a longer stream next time to try and finish each volume in one session, we can do that. But I have a feeling that these sessions will get longer as we make our way to Koriko and eventually start working in the city and maybe trying to find out what's going on with these glyphs and how they impact the world around us. Before I leave, there are 2 commands available in my chat that I will post now. One is !Koriko, which will remain active. It tells you a little bit about the game and where you can buy it. It's currently on sale through Itch.io. I think it's $18, and honestly, this is such a cute game. I highly recommend checking it out. And the second is !Journal. Every entry that we've written here today will be posted in this Notion journal to refer back to. So if you want to read the entries after, if you maybe have to miss a stream, this will record all of our entries up to date and keep track of Kestrel Larkspur's journey. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. It's been really cool. I'm really glad to see that there has been interest in this story, and I'm really looking forward to telling the story with you guys. Yeah, thanks again, and we will stream next week Saturday at the same time. Check me out on Twitter at Tyrantonut. You can also find me on Discord under the same username. I hang out in a bunch of different channels, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys!